Hello Internet, I'm Farrell, and here's the Space Engineers Update parody for November 23rd, 2017. For those folks hoping for a list of fixes in this week's update, the great news is that it was decided at some level that you need to learn about new content contest focused on patting everyone's back over the recent changes and dismemberments caused by the Fysxs update. And to support that, Keen has been gracious enough to add something to the game asked for by, well, not sure who asked for it, but you can now set the screen size multiplier in the game settings. Keen, if I had a slow clap animation in the game, I'd be using it right now. I won't dispute the handiness of that setting, especially in regards to the screenshot competition. But once again, you missed the mark by not bringing back any form of things like ambient light settings or sun controls from the old debug screen. We know the code is there, so why can't this be migrated into the Space Master menu already? But that's okay, time was taken out to also announce the old great original Skybox would be returning to the game. So let me get this straight. Mojang announces Minecraft is going to completely redo the texture pack to say blurry make your eyes water in a future version of the game, and suddenly this is announced by Keen? And to think, people suggested that Keen wasn't releasing details on upcoming changes because they didn't want anyone else to steal them. Anyways, moving on from the silliness, let's look at some of this week's sparse update log. Item number 1, various crashes were fixed, none of which are detailed, so folks like me can only hope that the game is going to gain some stability. Drill efficiency versus armor has been changed, but again, no details on whether this means that drills are now armor-piercing in nature, or if they can't even scratch the paint. There's another entry in the official update log about a fix for large grids undocking after a reload on single player. I can only imagine the pure hell that's put more than a few people through. Our final fix for the week was that highlights are no longer going through characters. And again, since there are no details here, I can only assume that this was interaction highlights not being eclipsed properly by players, and not people being randomly perforated by a children's magazine commonly found in waiting rooms of doctors and dentists. Missing from this week's update are any fixes for turrets and not letting the dead rest in peace, large grid 5x5 wheels falling off instantly on placing or spawning new wheels in creative, detached wheels having a magical hovering ability, autopilot not being able to use wheels for movement, wheels constantly forcing their settings back to 45 degrees of steering and 25% friction, wheels steering numerical values expecting radians as the value despite the slider being degree based, and conveyor networks glitching out on load, forcing a power cycle onto the ship to correct the issue. But hey, they've still asked everyone to leave a review for Space Engineers on Steam. And at least they pointed out that both good and negative reviews are welcome, so I figured I would pass on the same advice. Take some time and leave a review on Steam with your honest opinion of the game. Now to address the elephant in the room, last week's update, which still needs a proper rundown. So last week, Keen did indeed do it, as Red Farrell urged, and unleashed an overhaul of Fysxs and Space Engineers. While the update changed much about how rotors and pistons operate, it also introduced problems with wheels and has only mostly resolved the problems with grids phasing through the ground, with people still reporting issues with landing gear and ground impacts ghosting into the planet. At the same time, the new Fysxs system has not been optimized for multiplayer, meaning that Clying is still very much alive client-side. A welcome change last week was the increase in prevalence and functionality of the on-screen warnings, taking the old multiplayer lag notification, which was usually just stating the visually obvious, to one that could report on potentially unsafe construction and put more insight into poor game performance. At the same time, this notification can now also be disabled without actually having to disable what it tracks, so you can still pop your head in and see what's going on. Also on the change log for that week is a change to the mod API, which had the predicted breaking effect for some mods. Like the Fysxs change, this is a positive indication of Keen's attempts to resolve major issues in the game and continuing on their hunt for performance issues, but as with the Fysxs, this has undoubtedly caused a few problems out there. My main concern with last week's update is that more attention was put into the hype and not a lot of thought put into communicating the changes in advance. Grids that had previously worked fine before have developed problems, and pistons themselves have now essentially turned into a ticking time bomb on world load. Now, speaking of bombs, there's the little matter of needing to deliver one to a certain Red Farrell, so I'll catch you guys next week. But first, here's a quote. "The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking."